All right, Matthew 24. The goal is to see first that we can hopefully get maybe 40, 45 minutes before any storms arrive, and I can, if I need to, I can wrap it up as fast as I can before we get knocked off the internet. But hopefully that does not happen. The goal is to finish as much as we can tonight on Matthew chapter 24. This is part, is it 12 now? Yes, part 12 in our study of Matthew chapter 24. We've covered so many different things. We've looked at so many different things. But let's just jump in and remind us of where we have been. Matthew chapter 24. First and foremost, we remember the context of the chapter. Matthew 24 is dealing with questions asked by the disciples in regards to Jesus making a prophecy that the temple is going to be destroyed. They don't understand, they are confused, and they want to know when, what is going on, right? Jesus responds to them by giving them the signs that obviously, first and foremost, points to what? The destruction of the temple, and we all know when that occurred, 70 AD. So, the problem is, for some weird reason, especially in modern church history, everybody runs to Matthew 24 and they grab all of these signs and almost forget that they point to 70 AD. Or they will say something like this: well, maybe they pointed to 70 AD, but we don't live then, so they point to now to the second coming. And you're like, well, that's interesting that you just decided that on yourself, for yourself. But we have to first and foremost figure out, were these signs pointing to 70 AD, and were they fulfilled? All right? Does that make sense? And remember, there's different perspectives. There's the futuristic perspective and the historical perspective. Futuristic says that everything in Matthew 24 points to the future. Even if it pointed to the past, it points to the future for us. The historical view is like, nope, this has all been done. It's all been fulfilled, right? Or we sometimes refer to that as preterism or the preterist view, right? We remember all of that? Okay. I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing this, but just remember Matthew 24, starting in verse 4 to verse 13, but I don't think anybody in this room, and nobody emailed me or posted anything on YouTube. I think for the most part, there seems to be pretty good agreement that it would be not only fair to say, not only is it probable, not only is it possible, but most likely it's the only way to actually interpret it correctly, is verses 4 through 13 was all fulfilled leading up to 70 AD. The verse that we thought could possibly be a transition verse where we jump from a past fulfillment to a future was what verse? 14. Verse 14, which reads, "And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come." However, what did we discover? The Apostle Paul said the gospel had gone into all the world. In fact, he goes so far to say what in Colossians? To every creature. That's pretty specific. He also makes similar claims in the book of Romans, which I did the other day on a podcast episode, yesterday, I believe. All right? So we looked at some additional verses, and the bottom line is we think that that's been fulfilled. So now we can say, pretty dogmatically, that verse 4 to 14 was fulfilled prior to 70 AD. Okay? People may not like that, but it seems probable. I mean, look, and again, if you disagree, you got to argue with the Apostle Paul. Don't argue with me. I didn't write Colossians. I didn't write Romans. Okay? I didn't make those claims that Paul made, that the gospel's gone into all the world. It's gone to every creature. Okay, well, he said that, not me. And he said it before 70 AD. Okay, remember Colossians was written when? Yeah, in 60, 61. Even if we put 63, even if we put 64, even if we put 65, even if you put 68, it would still be done before 70 AD. So, even if you go with a late date, you still have it before 70 AD. All right? So everybody on the same page there. All right. So tonight is all about one verse. Verse 15. When I got in my car this afternoon to drive home, I turned on Christian radio. And guess what I heard them talking about? The abomination of desolation coming in the future. That's what I heard when I turned on Christian radio on the way home. And I was just kind of like, well, there's one perspective, okay? There's one perspective. But it was timely, I guess we could say. But we're going to look at this. Now again, what do we need to figure out? Has it already happened? Okay? Not only has it happened, but what exactly does it refer to? So, let's do this. Everybody ready? All right. Matthew chapter 24, verse 15. Here we go. When ye. Now, that's a very important thing because it seems to be the fact that Jesus says, when ye, right there, just at least, I would say textually, would make me think that he is speaking to the disciples who asked the question. Right? That would be I think that'd be a fair assessment. Would everyone agree with that assessment? All right. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel, let Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. Now what's interesting is though, now it goes to ye to the whosoever readeth. That's interesting, is it not? Some could argue, see, it has a future implication. Okay, maybe. That is an interesting phrase there. Now, here's what we need to do before we do anything else. Go to Luke. Does anybody remember where in Luke? Does everybody? Okay. Does everybody know where in Luke? 21. Luke 21. Okay, all right. I was like, come on, we got to remember. And where is it in Mark? 13. Okay, good. All right, go to Luke 21, because I think typically the Luke passage is the one that a lot of people reference here. I could be wrong. It's Luke 21, right? Luke 21. Find the verse that speaks of the abomination of desolations. Okay? Does anybody find it here? See if anybody can find anything. Okay, where is it? Verse 20. And when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Now, he doesn't mention here what? He doesn't mention abomination, desolation. He also does not mention Daniel. But if that desolation, is that the same desolation? Or is this a different desolation? Is this desolation simply referring to what? The destruction of the city and the temple, right? Not some abomination of desolation. Is it the same thing? Is it different? We could get into a discussion there. Does Mark make any reference to it? What does Mark say? Okay, Mark 13:14. And what does he say? Does he say Daniel? Does he say abomination?
But when you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing where it ought not, let him that readeth understand, then let them that be in Judea flee to the mountains.
Okay, so there's a slight difference. There'd be a slight difference where he standeth, where he ought not. Everybody see that? Okay. Now, the reason there's some discussions here is is the abomination desolation a thing? Is it a person? Is it an event? So you look for little clues. I just want you to see all the different references. We could take them a little bit more apart, but I want you to at least be familiar with the references. All right, everybody? Okay. Yeah, and Mark it does. And Mark it does.
Luke is the only one.
The NIV doesn't.
What's it in quotes? The abomination of
desolation.
That causes desolation, but it doesn't reference but the quotation maybe.
Okay.
Mark it doesn't.
No.
All right, well, it's the NIV. I mean, I don't know. You know. Okay, what can you say? All right, all right. Okay, but, so I just want you to see that. Did you say something? It, very good, very good. This is what creates some issues, right? Is the abomination, desolation an it, or is it a he? Thing, object. Yeah, the NIV is it. So you see there's lots of these little technical things. I just want you to get kind of a feel for some of the issues we have to deal with, and we're going to jump into this. We're going to be relying on a couple of sources. We'll probably end up relying on a little bit of Josephus. Who knows? We got a lot of things to look at. I had everyone look up lots of references from Josephus that I gave yesterday. We may go back to those, maybe not. If you looked at them, great. If you did not, you'll be okay. Probably, okay? Probably, maybe, okay? I'll just assume that you did look at them. All right, here we go. Everybody ready? All right. Question we have to ask tonight. Are you ready? What is, not when, what is the abomination of desolation? Why do we have to define what it is before we can try to answer when it occurred? If you don't know what it is, yeah. And remember, I played the same game with everyone on 14. I asked you what is required for verse 14 to be fulfilled in your mind, right? And nobody wanted to commit. In fact, Stacy just outright refused, okay? Bobby was the only one who just stepped up and said, every creature, okay? And I was like, thank you for saying that, Bobby, okay? Because I knew Colossians was going to say every creature. So, here's my question for you tonight. In your mind, what would be required for the abomination of desolation to occur? Okay, go ahead and have the Daniel reference ready. Okay, have it ready. Okay, but that's good. Okay, but the thing is, there's got to be something in your mind like this must happen. Now, Daniel may be the only thing that we have to go by. But, okay. All right. Well, we're going to definitely look. But I just want you to have in your mind what you feel must occur, must happen. Okay. Well, obviously we know this is referencing the temple, right? So we know something in the temple has to occur. So a temple must be standing, all right? Or a new temple must be built in the future, right? So a temple would be required. Everyone agrees with that. A temple would be required. Something has to happen inside the temple. Okay, some kind of abomination. Something has to rise to the level of an abomination for this to occur. Another thing, some people would argue that a peace treaty must be made with Israel prior to this occurring, but Matthew or Luke or Mark does not make it. They're going to pull that somewhere from Daniel. All right, so now we have to ask, how important is Daniel to interpreting this? So there's lots of questions, all right? I'm not going to make you commit here because this one would be a little bit more difficult to answer, right? Agreed? Because it's just the whole phrase. Is it the abomination of desolation or is it the abomination that causes desolation? All right, so it could be an idol. Just keep that in mind, okay? That's important, especially if you go back to, I think, 163 BC, but we won't go there right now. Okay, everybody ready? Here we go. Jesus spoke of a coming abomination of desolation in the Olivet Discourse, as he referenced a future event mentioned in Daniel chapter 9. So go to Daniel chapter 9 really quick. Daniel chapter 9. Tell me amen when you're there, or say amen when you're there. Or say yep. Okay, whichever one. Okay, Daniel 9. Okay. All right. Oh, boy. Let's just go to verse 24. Man. Oh, man. Man, Daniel. Oh, man. Okay. This just causes severe headaches. Okay. Daniel 9. I was trying to avoid Daniel. Okay. But I knew we were going to have to. Now, I could just try to zoom in to the smallest portion possible and go, just look at that, don't look at anything else. But for context, let's get an idea here. All right, so Daniel chapter 9, verse 24. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon the holy city to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins and to bring reconciliation for iniquity and to bring in everlasting righteousness and to seal up the vision and prophecy and to anoint the most holy. Now, most believe that these are not weeks like 7-day weeks, that these are weeks of years. That's what most people believe. We can get a whole, because that, just all the hermeneutical problem. So now weeks aren't weeks are now year. Just becomes maddening at this point trying to figure it out. But we also know that if you try to figure out the dating, 70 actual weeks don't seem to work. All right, to see all the issues that can possibly arise here. All right, we don't have time to get into all that, but you understand. All right, verse 25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks, the street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. Now, stop at verse 25. Stop at verse 9:25. What would be some obvious questions any good Bible student would have right here? What would be some good questions? Okay. Well, let's do this. A commandment's going to go forth, right? To do what? Restore and build Jerusalem. We would think that that's the restoring and rebuilding Jerusalem of something that is in the past. Yes? Or is this some kind of rebuilding something in the future? Well, future for them, past for us. Does that make sense? Okay. And from that command for the restoring and rebuilding of Jerusalem until what? The Messiah. And most likely, we would believe that is referencing to the appearance of the Messiah in which coming? First coming. All right. Some could possibly, I'm just throwing out concepts here. Okay. And the people of the prince that shall come, verse 25, and the prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, and the street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. Most believe the Messiah being cut off is a reference to what? The crucifixion. All right? So we have the rebuilding of Jerusalem. We have the appearance of Jesus. Then we have him being crucified. That's a basic understanding. Now, look, there's all kinds of different ways of going about this. I'm just throwing out some basic ideas. Did you have something, Stephen? Will be put to death. Okay, that makes it a lot easier to even understand. Okay, all right. Not for himself. Is going to be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. Well, that seems to refer to possibly what? 70 AD. 70 AD, possibly, yes? Because it's after the death of Christ. Correct? Now what happens? And he... Oh, that's great. All of a sudden we have this pronoun there, right? And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Okay, who's the he that all of a sudden just got dropped into this? Well, the prince, which... The prince of the people. Everybody see it? And then the people of the prince shall come and destroy the city. The people of the prince, that would be he would go to that. That would make sense, right? I mean, I guess that's the correct way to determine who that person is, yes? All right. He shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. In the midst of that week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even unto the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. In other words, whoever this he is, which probably is the prince, is going to make some kind of a covenant, and then he's going to do what? It's going to be abomination, and it's going to stop what? The sacrifice and offerings are going to stop. All right. Okay. Now, a lot of people take this and immediately go, future temple, right? Make a covenant with Israel. 3.5 years, he walks into the temple. No, most people would say this refers to a future temple, even for us. Antichrist comes in. He makes a covenant with Israel for 3.5 years, walks into the temple, declares himself to be God, and stops all of the sacrifices. That's how it was talked about this morning on Christian radio on my way to my house. That's how many interpret this. Now, what's a possible problem with this? Well, let me just make it simple. The biggest problem with that is that Jesus mentions this prophecy in relation, obviously, to 70 AD. Unless you believe verse 15, Jesus has forgotten 70 AD and now jumped to the future. All right? That's problem number one. Problem number two, true. So, problem number two would be, if this already occurred, then why are we looking for a future? One, Jesus seems to put it in the context of 70 AD. Two, if this has already been fulfilled, then why are we looking for a future fulfillment? All right? So, and I agree, Stephen's right. Everything here seems to be about the first coming of Jesus, then destruction, this prince. It seems to be in that time period. Why did it just jump all of a sudden to who knows when? That's a good possibility, but we'll see here. All right? So I just want us to be familiar with it. Just please note, there are so many things we can look at in that Daniel. I don't think that you're an expert on that Daniel passage now. We didn't even scratch the surface. We didn't even come within 1,000 miles of the passage. We did one of those flyovers at 20,000 feet. Okay, we didn't barely even looked at it. Okay, everybody got that? All right, now. Jesus spoke of the coming abomination of desolation in the Olivet Discourse as he referenced a future event mentioned in Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. In Matthew 24, 15 through 16, Jesus says, "So when you see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by the prophet Daniel, standing in the holy place, then those in Judea must flee to the mountains." That's the Christian Standard Bible. That's the version that I'm quoting there. All right? So when the abomination of desolation is standing in the holy place, it just says, when you see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by the prophet Daniel, standing in the holy place. It doesn't say, is it a person? It doesn't even really use a pronoun, at least in the Christian Standard Bible. All right? Okay, so far so good? In the King James it doesn't either. In Mark it does. In Mark it does. All right, okay. Now, an abomination, are you ready for this? You may want to write this down. An abomination is something that causes disgust or hatred. Okay? Something is an abomination, right? I use that term all the time. Okay? If I see someone listening to music on certain headphones, I'm like, that's an abomination! Okay? What are you doing? All right? Okay? I could, all kinds of music things I could say, all right? An abomination is something that causes disgust or hatred. Desolation is a state of complete emptiness or destruction. So so think of it this way. There's going to be an abomination that brings about complete destruction. or emptiness. Jesus warned, please listen to these words carefully, okay? So everybody got abomination and desolation? So in other words, do we understand it that the abomination brings about the desolation? Right? Does that make sense? And the NIV, I think, words it very much that way, does it not? It says...
Abomination that causes desolation. That's Daniel.
Okay, that's Daniel. How does it read in Matthew 24? Does it say abomination of desolation, or does it say the abomination that causes or brings
The
about?
abomination that causes desolation.
There we go. The abomination that causes desolation. So everybody understand that? There's got to be an abomination, and then that abomination will be followed by what? Desolation. All right, so everybody got that? Does that make sense? So far, so good? All right, are you experts now? Okay, experts. Okay, I like that. I like that. Experts. All right, here we go. All right. Jesus warned. Now listen. Everybody listening? Jesus warned that something or someone that people detested would stand in the temple someday. So something or someone that people detest, that people would hate, is going to find itself where? In the temple. A someone or a something is going to end up in the temple that people hate. And that's going to bring about a desolation. So far, so good? All right. We're going to become experts on this, I'm telling you. All right. When that horror occurred, or when it will occur, residents of Judea should seek cover without delay. Other translations speak of the abomination that causes desolation, the sacrilegious object that causes desecration, that's the New Living Translation, and that horrible thing, that's one version of the Bible. The Amplified Bible adds the note that the abomination of desolation is the appalling sacrilege that astonishes and make desolate. Whatever this thing is, it's horrible. It's bad. Desolation is going to follow. So when you see it, the people where? In Judea. That, again, very specifying a specific location, which is, again, very interesting, right?
Mark and Matthew both use Judea, and Luke says
Jerusalem,
Jerusalem.
all right? Judea, Jerusalem. A specific location. When you see it, run for your life. Get out of town. Don't even pack. Move. Flee to the mountains. Oh, okay, right. So I'm just saying, it's ye, when you see it, here's what you do, run. Okay, that seems very specific. Again, seemingly to indicate Jesus is really using this event, I think, for 70 AD. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But I'm just saying that that's where I'm going so far. Right? We're willing to change our mind, yes. Okay. Jesus referenced Daniel in his words in the Olivet Discourse. The prophet Daniel mentioned the abomination of desolation in 3 places. Everybody ready for the 3? The first one is Daniel 9:27. Daniel 9:27. We read that one, correct? Let me read it from the Christian Standard Bible. He will make a firm covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he will put a stop to sacrifice and offering, and the abomination of desolation will be on the wing of the temple until the decreed destruction is poured out on the desolator. That's an interesting translation, is it not? On the wing of the temple. That's interesting. All right? But that's fine. Where's the first place it's referenced? 9:27. Where's the second place? 11:31. I'm going to read this from the New King James. You ready? Forces shall be mustered by him, and they shall defile the sanctuary fortress, and they shall take away the daily sacrifices and place there the abomination of desolation. Now that's very different in certain ways, right? They shall defile the sanctuary, plural, And they, plural, shall take away the sacrifices, and they will place there the abomination of desolation. They're going to place something there. They, now it's referring plural. Now, what are they going to place there? Are they going to place a person? Or are they going to place a thing? All right, so, everybody with me so far? Okay. Where's the third place it's used? 12:11. New American Standard. From the time that the regular sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. From the time that the regular sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. The wording in the above translations indicate that the abomination of desolation is an object. That's how they view it. In some other translations, the abomination appears to be a person. On the wing of abomination shall come one who makes desolate. That's the ESV. The one who makes desolate refers to it as a person. So, different translations, meaning there seems to be some struggle to determine if it's a person or a thing. Does everybody see that? Why is this all important? Why are we spending all the time trying to figure this out? We can't determine if it's occurred if we don't know what it is, right? All right, so just keep it in mind. So, possibly a person, possibly a thing. Wouldn't it be great if we could find in history that it was a person and a thing? That would make our job easy, wouldn't it? Let's see. Regardless of whether the abomination of desolation is a person or a thing, Daniel predicted the following. So it seems there are 5 things Daniel predicted. All right, we're going to try to summarize the 5 things. You ready? Number 1, a future ruler will make a treaty with the people of Israel. Seems like some kind of treaty will be made. Number 2, the terms of this treaty will be for a week, which we take to be a period of 7 years. This is at least the claim. I'm just going to be honest with you. I struggle with that whole 1 week of 7 year thing all day long, but I don't know what else to do. I mean, we've worked through Daniel 9 before, trying to figure it out. I've never been completely convinced either way, just because it just messes up my hermeneutic. All of a sudden a week becomes 7 years, well then a day can be 1 billion years. I mean, you know what I'm saying? You just start having all kinds of issues at that point. Okay, but, all right. So number 1, a future ruler will make a treaty. Number 2, with Israel. Number 2, the terms of the treaty will be for 1 week, which appears to be a period of 7 years. Number 3, midway through this time, the ruler will gather his troops and put an end to the sacrifices and offerings in the temple. Number 4, at that time, the ruler will desecrate the temple, setting up some type of sacrilegious object. All right, I'll go through these again. What was number 1? A ruler will make a treaty with the people of Israel. Number 2, the terms of the treaty will be for 1 week. Number 3, midway through the time, they're going to gather his troops and put an end to sacrifices in the temple. Number 4, at that time, the ruler will desecrate the temple, setting up some type of sacrilegious object. Yeah, I guess midway through, somewhere midway through, they're going to desecrate the temple. All right? Now this one, pay close attention to this one. The desecration of the temple will continue until the judgment of God is finally meted out on the ruler and his followers. 1,290 days later, that one becomes somewhat where we may have problems, right? Because if we say Titus fulfilled it, did Titus get judged 1,290 days later? Okay. Let me read number 4 again. Number 4, at that time the ruler will desecrate the temple, setting up some type of sacrilegious object. Okay. Now number 5. Well, but was it 1,290 days later? Okay. Right. You see that we're going to have to try to figure that out, right? Okay. This one, now I'm saying, just say number 5 can be a problem. We just got to admit it, right? Remember, what are we not committed to? Any particular view. See, isn't it freeing when you're not committed? I don't care. I don't care who gets mad. I don't care, like, preterists get mad. How dare you? Because I guarantee you, verses 4 through 13, preterists were like, you're our friends, all right? Okay, now they're going to be, when I start questioning this, they're going to be like, you're garbage, okay? And then I've had the futurists like, you're garbage. And now, right now, they'd be like, oh, you are a friend. Like, it doesn't matter, I'm going to tick someone off, but I don't care about your side. Stop being committed to a side, right? We got to be committed to trying to figure out what happened. All right, so here we go. Number 5. Everybody ready? The desecration of the temple will continue until the judgment of God is meted out on the ruler and his followers. 1,290 days later, that's how long? 3.5 years and 1 month. Man, I don't like that part. So if we could leave that part out, I think we can get most of this done in 70 AD. That one is problematic, is it not? All right. We'll see what the preterists do, because I've got the preterists right here waiting to talk, right here. I got the preterists ready to go. How much? What do you, I'm going to put money on it. I mean, people are listening, going, "Wait, they bet in their church?" Yeah, we're going to bet. We're going to create an office pool here, right? I bet they don't mention that part of Daniel. I hope they mention it and give me a good explanation. I have a feeling that this is going to be kind of just like, oops, we could be wrong. All right, everybody ready? Daniel's prophecies about the abomination of desolation seem to have at least one partial fulfillment. All right, everybody ready? So we're going to put, number 1, just put the first partial fulfillment. And everybody knows when this one occurred, right? Everyone knows? Does everyone know? 167 BC. 167 BC. Well, the book of 1st and 2nd Maccabees is a very important reading if you want to know kind of what happened. But yes, during Daniel's prophecies about the abomination of desolation seem to have at least a partial fulfillment in 167 BC, when a Greek ruler by the name of Antiochus, right? He's also known as Antiochus Epiphanes, right? He gave himself the name Epiphanes because it stands for illustrious one or God manifester. So Antiochus, the God manifester, okay? He's pretty got a high opinion of himself, does he not? Almost viewing himself as God, which that's kind of important, right? Okay. Hang on, I got to verify something here because I don't want to finish this and get a. Okay, give me something here. I want to make sure I'm accurate. I think I am correct. If I'm wrong, someone can correct me. I believe he would be Antiochus the Fourth. All right? Antiochus the Fourth, I believe, okay? I'm almost 1,000% sure of that, okay? Antiochus the Fourth, do what? Okay, it is a number, right? So that's why I just looked it up to verify. But I'm just because I'm not super confident now, I'm just going to say that I'm not sure, just because I don't want to be wrong. Does that make sense? Okay, because it's numbers, and I'm horrible at remembering numbers. Okay, all right. Everybody got that? Now, everybody got their thinking caps on? All right. This was partially fulfilled possibly in 167 BC when a Greek ruler by the name of Antiochus IV desecrated the temple in Jerusalem. Antiochus called himself Epiphanes, illustrious one, or God manifester. Everybody listening? He set up an altar to Zeus over the altar of burnt offering, and he sacrificed a pig on the altar. Antiochus went even further in his atrocities, slaughtering a great number of the Jews, selling others into slavery, and he issued decrees forbidding circumcision and requiring Jews to sacrifice to pagan gods and to eat pig meat. Now, man, when I hear things like that, I'm like, there's the fulfillment. It's done. The abomination of desolation occurred. The only problem is, Jesus, what are you doing? Don't confuse me anymore, okay? What are you doing? Okay? I just need one fulfillment and be done with it, right? Agreed? Now, let's see what else they say here. What Antiochus did certainly qualifies as an abomination. Can everyone say amen to that? But it was not a complete fulfillment of Daniel's prophecy. Antiochus Epiphanes did not enter into a covenant with Israel for 7 years. For example, and in Matthew 24, Jesus, speaking some 200 years after Antiochus' evil actions, spoke of Daniel's prophecy as having a still future fulfillment. So what can we say? Whatever Antiochus Epiphanes did, it was not a fulfillment of Daniel. That we can be dogmatic. We can say it's a partial fulfillment, but what's the point of a partial fulfillment? People say, well, a partial fulfillment was saying you're on the right path. I guess. I don't know. It wasn't fulfilled, so I don't know. Okay. Maybe you could say it was a preview of things to come. Possibly. All right. But the main thing is, Jesus speaks of it when? Somewhere around 33 AD. How many years did I say? 200 or 500, 200 years after. Jesus speaks some 200 years after the actions. All right? Or around 200 years, okay? I'd have to try to figure out the math, and I'm horrible at math, but you get the idea, okay? So clearly what Jesus is talking about was not fulfilled with Antiochus Epiphanes. Everybody agree? Yeah, everybody committed to that? All right? Yes? All right, so here we go. The question becomes what? The question then becomes when after Jesus' day was the abomination of desolation prophecy fulfilled? Or are we still waiting for the fulfillment? The Preterist view is that Jesus' warning in Matthew 24:15 concerned events leading up to the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. In this view, the abomination of desolation probably occurred during the Roman occupants of Jerusalem when the Roman army brought their heathen images and standards into the temple courts. According to this source, they reject the Preterist view. They take a futuristic approach. Now, they don't go much in detail defending their futuristic approach. They basically have 2 short paragraphs that read like this. Are you ready? We take the futurist view, which sees the abomination of desolation prophecy as still future. In our view, Jesus was referring to the Antichrist, who in the end times will establish a covenant with Israel for 7 years, then break it by doing something similar to what Antiochus Epiphanes did in the temple. The sacrilegious object Jesus called the abomination of desolation could be the image of the beast that the Antichrist right-hand man, the false prophet, will order to be set up and worshipped, Revelation 13:14. Of course, for Matthew 24:15 to be yet future, the temple in Jerusalem would have to be rebuilt before the tribulation begins. Those who are alive during the tribulation should be watchful and recognize that the breaking of the covenant with Israel and the abomination of desolation will be the beginning of the worst 3.5 years in history. And then that's basically where they stop. That don't offer much of a proof. They're just like, well, we just don't think it's 70 AD. It's got to be future. Now, what are some of the problems with that? What are some possible problems? Yeah, the context is clearly 70 AD, and just how Jesus said, when you see it, those in Judea and Jerusalem, get out. Don't even go back to your house. It would be weird that that's referring to the future. So you're saying that in the future, when the Antichrist goes into the temple, the only people who need to flee are those who live in Jerusalem? You would think that the whole world would have to go into hiding. Right? Because the 3.5 years is supposedly a global thing that's going to happen to the whole world, right? So, I don't know. Let's see what the preterists have to say. Right? What would be the best argument that it wasn't fulfilled in 70 AD? What would be the best argument? That it wasn't. Remember number 5? Daniel says something has to happen. It's going to occur until judgment is fulfilled 1,290 days later. That's the one I'm like, oh, I hate that. Okay? Right? I struggle with that one, yes? All right. Here we go. We're going to see if we can get this finished here. Everybody ready? Titus dies in 81. 11 years. So.
7 years and then 3.5. The covenant for 7 years.
Well, that'd be 10, right? I mean, I'm horrible at math, but I'm pretty sure. So still, I mean, it would be close, maybe. I mean, I don't know. We'll have to see if it... I think everyone's just going to ignore that part, right? I mean, even in that article, the Futurist View, that didn't even mention that as one of their major reasons for rejecting it.
The terms of the treaty will be a week and then halfway through that.
Oh, that's true.
So it's not the full 7 weeks or years, whatever, halfway through that.
Halfway through, he does that, and then it continues for 3.5 more years. Right, so that's true. So, yeah, that wouldn't work either. Yeah, all right. So, all right, here we go. This segment of the discourse, referring to Matthew 24:15 to 22, this segment of the discourse is widely understood today to refer to an event that has not yet transpired, and an event popularly described as the Great Tribulation. It has given rise to a multitude of interpretations, particularly within dispensational theology regarding the time of the rapture, whether it is before the tribulation, in the middle of it, or after it. We will examine these questions of the rapture at a later time. For the present, we merely note the passing that a host of controversial eschatological theories came into play with respect to this text. I think we can agree that because of this text, a lot of different views of eschatology have come from it. Can everyone agree? All right. The Preterist View includes the tribulation and the abomination of desolation with the signs that take place prior to the destruction of Jerusalem. So in the Preterist view, the tribulation, the abomination of desolation, and all the signs take place prior to what? 70 AD. No argument is required to prove the strict and exclusive reference of this section to Jerusalem and Judea. They say there's no real argument that's even needed, required. And here's what they say. Now they're going to go, remember, they keep referring to Russell. Remember, we talked about him? Yes, right? James Stuart Russell. All right, they're going to keep referring to him. Okay, so Russell says this, I quote, "Here, we can detect no trace of a double meaning of primary and ulterior fulfillments of underlying and typical senses. Everything is national, local, and near. The land is the land of Judah. This people is the people of Israel, and the lifetime of the disciples, when ye therefore shall see. So they take the language and say it's referring to the land, the people, and those who were alive. Clearly, this had to happen in their lifetime. Russell goes on to argue for a first century fulfillment of this prophecy. Most expositors find an allusion to the standard of the Roman legions and the expression, the abomination of desolation, and the explanation is highly probable. So they're saying the abomination of desolation were the standards or the flags that they carried. And that's what, when they came in and people would see those things on the Temple Mound, that was going to tick them off. Right? Do the Jews still get upset when Muslims or someone else goes up? They don't want them there. Right? They still get upset about it. Right? That would make some sense. Yes. Right? The eagles were the objects of religious worship to the soldiers, and the parallel passage in St. Luke is all but conclusive evidence that this is the true meaning. All right, so they're like, they had eagles on it. This was an act of work. They worshipped basically these eagles. That's on the standards, and they think that this is what's being referred to here. All right? Okay, I'm not completely convinced, but okay. We know from Josephus, now we're back to Josephus, that the attempt of a Roman general in the reign of Tiberius to march his troops through Judea was resisted by the Jewish authorities on the ground that the idolatrous images on their standards would be basically profaning of the law. So Josephus argues that even the Jews at that time, hey, if they come marching through and they have those symbols on their standards, you're profaning, you're desecrating, this is wrong. So that would fit what happened in 70 AD. Okay, all right, so far. Then he names two other people. Provide the following note to the text of Matthew 24:15. All right, here we go. Matthew 24:15, how much time do we have? We have like 2 minutes, and we have a tornado watch for the current location until 10 p.m. today. Okay, thank you for telling me that. All right. I heard other phones going off, so I'm assuming that's what you were getting. Okay, all right, Matthew 24:15. Everybody ready? Matthew's tradition here makes explicit what is only hinted at in Mark, who does not mention the prophetic oracle. In addition, Matthew speaks of the holy place and so emphatically refers to the temple. The quotation is from Daniel 9:27, the idol altar of 1 Maccabees 1:54 and 59, with the example of Antiochus Epiphanes in mind. Jesus required neither persistence nor unusual insight to see where the rise of nationalism under Roman occupation would lead. Whether the abomination sacrilege refers to actual idolatry or to the entrance of Roman imperial eagle standards into the temple area is really immaterial. It was common practice then and for long centuries before to assert sovereignty over a nation by dethroning its God and replacing them by those of the conqueror. So in other words, what they are saying is the fact, it wouldn't have to require anything long-lasting. The fact that they came in and destroyed them is a way of saying, your God's gone, we're now God. Which would be an abomination, obviously, and we know that it led to desolation because they destroyed everything. All right? Okay. Calvin wrote the following. Because the destruction of the temple and the city of Jerusalem, together with the overthrow of the whole Jewish government, was, as we have already said, a thing incredible, and because it might be thought strange that the disciples could not be saved without being torn from the nation to which had been committed the adoption and the covenants, Romans chapter 9, verse 4, of eternal salvation. Christ confirms both by the testimony of Daniel, as if he had said that you may not be too strongly attached to the temple and to the ceremonies of the law. God has limited them to a fixed time and has long ago declared that when the Redeemer should come, sacrifices would cease, and that it may not give you uneasiness to be cut off from your own nation. God has forewarned his people that in due time it would be rejected. In other words, what Calvin is trying to say, Jesus is saying, hey guys, the whole point is stop looking to this temple. Stop looking to its sacrifices. You're going to be saved apart from Israel. You're going to be saved apart from sacrifices. You're going to be saved apart from the temple because I'm here. Very similar to Hebrews, right? Okay. Here we go. We're going to at least try to finish this. Russell then comments on the following portion of Matthew's text. Then if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there, do not believe it, for false Christs and false prophets will arise and show great signs and wonders, so as to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I've told you beforehand, therefore, if they say to you, look, he is in the desert, do not go out, or look, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For wherever the carcass is, there the eagles will be gathered together. Matthew 24, 23 to 28. Russell maintains that the text follows an unbroken continuity from what has preceded it. The very first word is indicative of continuity. Then, and every succeeding word is plainly addressed to the disciples themselves for their personal warning and guidance. It is clear that our Lord gives them information on what would surely come to pass, or at least what they might live to witness with their own eyes. It is a vivid representation of what actually occurred in the last days of the Jewish Commonwealth. The Jewish historian Josephus states, of so great a multitude, not one escaped. Their destruction was caused by a false prophet who had on that day proclaimed to those remaining in the city that God commanded them to go up to the temple and to receive the signs of their deliverance. So Josephus says one of the problems that happened is there was a false prophet saying, everybody go to the temple. Jesus said, when you see this, run. And the false prophet was like, no, go to the temple and you'll receive your deliverance. And what did they receive? Their death, which is kind of messed up. Well, pretty good sign why you don't listen to false prophets, right? Russell argues that the carcasses where the eagles will be gathered refers to the guilty and devoted children of Israel who will be destroyed by the Roman legions. The carcass is Israel and the eagles are Rome. And that's how they end there. Guess what I tell you they wouldn't mention? The Daniels, they just left it out. And to be fair, even the people who looked at the Futurist View, they didn't even really mention it. They mentioned it one time, but when they said, we hold to a Futurist View, they didn't say this is the reason why. So what do we do here? Good point. Jesus doesn't mention everything else. He doesn't go into days. That's a good point. So is it possible? Just hear me out. That obviously what Jesus is referring to, listen to me carefully, what Jesus is referring to. You hear what I said? I'm not saying all the verses in Daniel. What Jesus is referring to is what happened in 70 AD. Because he's like, when you see this, you get out of Judea. You get out of Jerusalem. Get out. And you're going to see the abomination of desolation. We do know this. Titus came in. Armies came in, right? We do know the temple was destroyed, yes? And that's obviously a desecration of it, yes? They carried away the objects within it, right? They've got that monument of them where the Roman soldiers are carrying all the things from the temple out of it. That's a desecration. They had their Roman standards with their eagles on it. They desecrated the whole thing. I believe so. Because Becca's been there and took a picture of it. But
They had eagles on their thing where it says about the eagles.
well, it talks.
I was like, eagles?
Yeah. So the eagles, that would make some kind of sense, right? That the Roman soldiers carried these symbols with eagles on it, which was a thing of worship. This would all make sense. So I'm going to say that 24:15 was fulfilled in 70 AD. I am not saying everything that Daniel pointed to was. Jesus grabs just the phrase, the abomination of desolation, clearly that.
Maybe just using like what they talk about in Daniel as an example.
Or that clearly it happens there. I'm going to make it very clear. Does that mean that I'm not going to say there's not going to be a future temple. I'm not going to say that there's no future possible. I'm not going to say no. I'm just saying that here, I don't need to say verse 15 jumps to the future. I'm just going to say verse 15 in its context is warning them that when you see this happen, leave. And Josephus reports that a false prophet told them, go the complete opposite of what Jesus told them to do. Meaning that Jesus' warning here is even more profound because of the historical record, if Josephus can be believed.
Detail that Jesus goes into about, look, not only leave, but don't even go back to your house to get anything.
Yeah, don't even go back.
Don't go anywhere near the
Run. And then we read the historical record where Josephus is like, no, there's a false prophet to tell him to go, we'll go to the temple. That was a wrong, bad idea. And they died. That's horrible. So I'm going to say 24:14 fulfilled, 24:15 fulfilled. I am not saying that answers everything in Daniel. I am not saying that means there's not going to be a future temple, and I'm not going to get into that. My job here is to figure out what's going on in 24:15, and it only makes sense it just makes sense that that's what it's referring to there. Right? Because 24:15 is the desolation, 16 is the warning, 17 is what? Still a warning.
On the housetop, not come down to take anything out of his house. And then verse 18, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. 19, woe unto them that are with child, and then the second those days, pray that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath.
Stop right there. That places it in a very specific historical context. Pray that this doesn't happen when? In the winter. Or on the Sabbath. This is clearly to Israel, clearly under a Jewish mindset, right? The Jews would have been still obviously remember in the New Testament there's all the arguments about Sabbath, right? Do you have to keep the Sabbath? And Paul says, hey, if one person honors one day, you don't fight with them. The Sabbath is mentioned in the New Testament as a source of controversy, yes? Well, it would still, I assume, still been somewhat controversial leading up to 70 AD, because what still existed prior to 70 AD? All of the issues of Judaism, temple, priest, sacrifice, feast days, holy days, Sabbath, that would fit perfectly there. What does that mean for me in 2022? Well, I hope it's not on the Sabbath.
Or in the winter.
Okay, I mean, right. This would have fit perfectly for that time period. Right? So I'm going to say that 15, where does the warning stop? 22?
20 talks about the Sabbath in the winter.
Right? 20.
And it talks about in 21, for then shall great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. That's 21. 22, and except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened.
Okay.
And then 23 talks about the...
All right. So we're going to go all the way to 20. 21 is where I have massive issues. I have major issues with 21. Because it's supposedly like something that no one has ever seen before. The temple had been destroyed before. Okay. Yeah, I mean, well, I'm just saying, I mean, come on. I mean, the whole world's been flooded before. I mean, like, you know what? That's where I have a problem here. Is this using hyperbole? I'm not a fan of interpreting it that way. We'll have to work on that.
But even Paul said the gospel had gone on to all creation.
Right.
All creatures.
So yeah. Well, I mean, but Paul, we have a confirmation that it did occur. Here, saying that the world has never seen anything like it or never will. I don't know if 70 AD is the greatest thing, the worst thing the world has ever seen, because I would go to World War II. I'd go to the dropping of nuclear weapons on 2 civilian cities during World War II.
This is Jesus speaking.
Yeah, I know.
Did he use hyperbolic language?
Yeah, see, I don't know. I'm just going to say we're not going to put 21 down as being fulfilled. All right? We're going to go all the way from 15 to 20. Clearly, that's 70 AD.
End in a punctuation. That's always been there, but
Right.
in a
21? 20 does. I know. That's a problem. But I'm just going to say I can get us to 20 and feel comfortable. 21, I have millions of issues. All right? I'll be the first to admit, 21, I'm just like, what? Wait. Like, this is the worst thing the world's ever seen. I think flooding and drowning the entire population is pretty bad. Okay? Or ever will see. And then I go World War II. Do you ever seen the videos of what happened in Japan when we dropped the bomb? Those are horrific. Or do you see what ever been to one of the concentration camps that the Jews, that Nazis had there exterminating 6 million Jews? That's far worse than 70 AD. Correct? All right. So I have a major problem there. Agreed? I have a major problem there. But up to that, I can feel confident going 70 AD, 70 AD, 70 AD. I get there and all of a sudden the brakes come on. It's like, to me, I'm driving along going, okay, 70 AD, and I get to verse 21, and it's like, what is that in the middle of the road? And I have to take a hard detour, go through a fence and crash and get out of the car and go, what is this, okay? Because I don't know what it is, because I have a hard time with that language. Agreed? And what happens after, what's the next section begin with?
After that, after 21, when I talk about the Great Tribulation.
Right. And then the worst that ever seen.
Yeah. And except those days should be
Shortened,
there
okay.
should be no flesh saved to be like saved. If any man shall say unto you, lo, here's the Christ.
Okay, then it starts that section. Okay. And some people connect that still back to the Abomination of Desolation.
All the way to 28, where it talks about the eagle.
Yeah, see? Oh, man. That 21 is going to cause us nightmares, okay? Or at least going to cause me nightmares. Most people just shrug their shoulders and don't care, but I care. But
27, you've got the lightning coming to the Son of Man.
the coming of the Son of Man in 27, yeah. Which, again, preterists say occurred. I'm going to have major problems with 27. I'm going to have major problems with 27. So 21 is where now I'm like, the wheels are starting to come off. The preterist view is strong up to 21. I mean, I'm like up to 21, I'm a preterist. 21, I'm like, wait, what? And when I get to 27, I'm like, you're out of your mind, okay? I get to 27, I'm like, this doesn't work anymore. Okay? But we'll see if we can pull it off. All right, any questions? Well, first of all, we'll see. First of all, we're going to see what the curriculum's going to do next, okay? But maybe at some point we may need to go back and work on those 70 weeks because it is a worthy course of trying to figure it out. I'm going to make sure really quick. Is there anything in the Discord? Okay, and I'm going to look here on the app. We may need to go back and work on That's me. Okay, the volume's up. Okay, nothing in the... I had to open up the Spreaker app and hit play to get me to see the chat. All right, so good. No questions. Everybody's like, what just happened? I don't understand. I'm so confused. Okay, well, I think we did a good job, right? I think so. Does everybody feel confident up to that point? Yes? We know what Abomination Desolation is now. I think we feel pretty good what it is. And I think we have a pretty good idea that it occurred in 70 AD. Now, what in the world goes on in verse 21? I have no clue. And again, I'm not saying that there can't be... Look, you want to see there's a future temple? By all means. I just don't think that's what Jesus is predicting here. You may say Daniel predicts it. Jesus, clearly his prediction is 70 AD. It just, all the language just makes The fleeing, the warning, everything. The fact that he tells them to flee and then a false prophet sends them to the temple according to Josephus, that's all just fits so perfectly with what happens. I just don't know what in the world goes on in 21. What is that craziness? All right, let's pray. Lord God, we come before you this evening. Lord, let us learn that we must listen to your word and not to the words of false prophets, because there are constantly deadly consequences for such foolishness. Let us heed your word, study your word, and do our best to understand it. And we ask this in Jesus' name. And God's people said,